The rain hammered against the windows of the Mountain View Corporate Center as I dragged my suitcase through the lobby. 3 days in the Colorado Rockies for our quarterly leadership retreat. What should have been a chance to reset and strategize had already started feeling like a nightmare before I even checked in. My name is Jordan, and after 5 years at Pinnacle Marketing Solutions, I thought I'd earned some respect. I was wrong. Jordan, there you are. Rebecca's voice cut through the lobby chatter. My assistant, former assistant as of 2 weeks ago, approached with that familiar look of barely contained frustration. She'd been reassigned to work directly under Regional Director Kevin Walsh after I'd supposedly failed to provide adequate leadership direction on the Morrison account. Rebecca, I nodded, trying to keep things professional despite the awkward tension. How's the new position treating you? The mountain air streaming through the entrance doors carried the scent of pine and distant snow. Other colleagues moved around us, checking in, greeting each other with the forced enthusiasm that comes with mandatory corporate bonding. Honestly? Rebecca's voice dropped low, but not low enough. Working with Kevin has shown me what real leadership looks like. I mean, no offense, but some people are just natural leaders and others. She gestured vaguely in my direction. I felt my chest tighten. What's that supposed to mean? Come on, Jordan. The Morrison project was a disaster. We lost a 6-figure client because you couldn't make a decision when it mattered. Kevin would have handled that completely differently. Rebecca's words hit like physical blows. I'm just saying, maybe this retreat will help you figure out where you actually belong in this company. The lobby seemed to grow quieter around us, or maybe I was just becoming hyper-aware of every conversation, every glance. Tom Bradley from accounting was openly listening now, probably already composing the email he'd send to his wife about the drama unfolding at check-in. You know what, Rebecca? I kept my voice steady despite the anger building inside. You're absolutely right. Maybe it's time I figured some things out. Good, she said, shouldering her laptop bag. Because honestly, watching you struggle these past few months has been painful. You're a failure as a leader, Jordan. Everyone can see it. The words hung in the air like a slap. Rebecca walked away toward the elevators, leaving me standing there with my suitcase handle cutting into my palm from gripping it too tightly. The thing is, she wasn't entirely wrong. The Morrison account had been a catastrophe. 3 months of work down the drain because I'd second-guessed myself at every crucial moment. Client presentations that fell flat, missed deadlines, a team that gradually lost confidence in my ability to guide them through challenging projects. Rough start to the retreat? I turned to find Logan, one of the junior analysts from the West Coast office. He'd witnessed the entire exchange, but his expression held empathy rather than judgment. Something like that, I muttered. For what it's worth, Logan said, adjusting his own bag. I heard Kevin talking earlier about how he basically took credit for all the groundwork you'd already done on Morrison. Sometimes the failure isn't where you think it is. I looked at him more carefully. Logan was probably 10 years younger than me, fresh out of business school, with the kind of confidence I remembered having once. Before I'd learned to doubt every decision, to overthink every strategic move until opportunities slipped away. Thanks, I said, meaning it. Though I'm not sure that changes anything at this point. Maybe not, Logan shrugged. But sometimes knowing the truth is the first step to changing the story. As we rode the elevator up to our floors, I caught my reflection in the polished steel doors. Tired eyes, shoulders slightly hunched, the posture of someone who'd been carrying failure around like a weight. Rebecca's words echoed in my head. You're a failure as a leader. The elevator dinged softly as we reached the 3rd floor. This is me, Logan said as the doors opened. Hey Jordan. Tomorrow's a new day. Don't let anyone tell you who you are. The doors closed, leaving me alone with my thoughts and the steady hum of the elevator motor. 3 more floors to go, 3 days ahead of me, and a CEO who'd be watching every interaction, every presentation, every moment where leadership could be demonstrated or destroyed. Outside my room window, the Colorado mountains stretched endlessly into the evening darkness, their peaks barely visible against the storm clouds. I unpacked slowly, hanging up the business casual clothes I'd brought for team exercises, the blazer I'd planned to wear for our final presentation to CEO Mitchell Thompson. My phone buzzed with a text from my brother. How's the corporate retreat going? Kicking ass and taking names yet? I stared at the message for a long moment before typing back, still figuring that out. The rain continued against the window as I tried to prepare myself for whatever challenges tomorrow would bring. Rebecca's words had stung because they contained enough truth to hurt. But Logan's parting comment stuck with me too. Don't let anyone tell you who you are. Maybe it was time to stop letting failure define me. Maybe it was time to remember who I used to be before doubt crept in and made every decision feel impossible. The retreat had already begun, and I had 3 days to prove to myself more than anyone else that Jordan wasn't synonymous with failure. Morning came too early, announced by the shrill beep of my phone alarm and the sight of gray clouds still clinging to the mountain peaks. The storm had passed, but left everything looking washed clean and somehow more vivid. I could smell coffee drifting up from the dining room 2 floors below. The first session was strategic problem solving under pressure, exactly the kind of corporate buzzword exercise I'd normally dread. But something about last night's conversation with Logan had shifted my perspective. Instead of walking into the conference room expecting to fail, I found myself curious about what would happen if I actually tried. "Good morning, everyone." Mitchell Thompson's voice boomed across the room as our CEO surveyed the 30-odd employees gathered around circular tables. He was one of those leaders who commanded attention without effort, tall, silver-haired, with the kind of presence that made you want to sit up straighter. "Today we're going to split into teams of 6 and tackle a real business challenge. One of our potential clients, Cascade Outdoor Gear, is struggling with market positioning. They want to expand from hiking equipment into urban outdoor lifestyle, but they're losing their core customer base in the process." I found myself at a table with Logan, 2 people from the Atlanta office I didn't know well, Christina and Jamel, plus Rebecca and Kevin Walsh. Of course, the universe had a sense of humor. "Jordan," Kevin said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, "why don't you take notes? You're good at documentation." The dismissal was casual but pointed. Kevin had already positioned himself as team leader, spreading out papers and pulling up market research on his laptop. Rebecca nodded approvingly, shooting me a look that said, "See what real leadership looks like?" But Logan caught my eye and raised an eyebrow slightly as if to say, "Your move." "Actually," I said, my voice steadier than I felt, "before we dive into solutions, shouldn't we make sure we understand the real problem?" Kevin paused, his fingers hovering over the keyboard. "The problem is obvious. They're trying to expand too fast and alienating their existing customers." "Is it though?" I leaned forward, feeling something click into place, a clarity I hadn't experienced in months. "Logan, you mentioned yesterday that you do a lot of outdoor photography, right? Are you familiar with Cascade?" "Yeah, actually," Logan's eyes lit up. "I've been using their gear for years. Their hiking packs are incredible, but lately," he paused, looking thoughtful. "Actually, they've been marketing to people who probably don't even know what a summit register is." Christina, one of the Atlanta team members, nodded slowly. "My husband bought one of their new Urban Explorer backpacks last month. Paid premium prices for features he'll never use, but he bought it because of the brand reputation from real outdoors people." I felt the familiar rush of pieces falling into place, the same feeling I used to get before the Morrison project taught me to second-guess everything. So the issue isn't just market expansion. It's that they're succeeding with new customers because of their reputation with core customers, but their marketing is actively pushing away the people who created that reputation in the first place. Jamel pulled up something on his phone. "Actually, look at this. Their social media engagement is way down among outdoor enthusiasts, but way up among urban professionals. And their premium pricing only works if people trust the quality, which comes from the outdoor community." Kevin's expression had shifted from dismissive to interested. Even Rebecca was paying attention now. "Okay," I continued, feeling more confident with each word. "So what if the solution isn't choosing between markets? What if it's about creating a bridge? Christina, what made your husband buy the pack despite not being a serious hiker?" "The story," she said immediately. "The videos of people using Cascade gear to summit mountains, the testimonials from real adventurers. He bought into the adventure, even if he's just carrying his laptop to coffee shops." "Exactly. So instead of abandoning their outdoor customer base or stopping urban expansion, they need to make their core customers the heroes of their brand story. Urban customers don't want to feel like posers, they want to feel connected to something authentic." The room had grown quiet around us. I noticed other teams glancing over, including CEO Thompson, who had paused his circulation around the room. "Go on," Kevin said, and for the first time since I'd known him, he sounded genuinely interested in my opinion. "What if they created a program where experienced outdoor enthusiasts become brand ambassadors for urban customers? Real hikers who help city dwellers choose the right gear for their actual needs, share stories about how the equipment performs in extreme conditions, maybe even organize urban outdoor events that connect both communities." Logan was nodding enthusiastically. "Like, instead of pretending a laptop backpack is climbing gear, show how the same durability that works on a mountain also works for someone biking to work in the rain. And the outdoor community feels valued and heard instead of replaced," Rebecca added slowly. I could see her reconsidering something. "Plus," Jamel said, pulling up more data, authenticity is huge for both demographics. Millennials and Gen Z especially, they can spot fake marketing from miles away. Kevin was typing rapidly now. This could work. Instead of two separate marketing campaigns competing for attention, it's one integrated story where different customers play different roles. Thompson appeared at our table just as we were really hitting our stride. "How's it going over here?" "Jordan's got an interesting angle on the Cascade Challenge," Kevin said, and I nearly fell off my chair. Kevin Walsh giving me credit for an idea. In front of the CEO. "Tell me," Thompson said, pulling up a chair. For the next 10 minutes, I walked through our analysis and proposal, feeling more like myself than I had in months. The team built on each idea, asking questions that sharpened the concept rather than tearing it down. Thompson asked pointed questions about implementation, budget considerations, potential risks. "This is good thinking," he said finally. "Really good. You've identified something most consulting firms miss, that brand authenticity isn't about choosing your customer, it's about being honest about the value you create for different people." After he moved on to the next table, Kevin looked at me with something that might have been respect. "I have to admit, Jordan, I wasn't expecting that." Rebecca was quiet, but she wasn't glaring at me anymore. If anything, she looked confused, like she was trying to reconcile the person she'd called a failure last night with the person who just led our team to what felt like a breakthrough. "Where did that come from?" Logan asked quietly as we broke for lunch. I thought about it as we walked toward the dining room. Outside, the clouds were finally breaking apart, revealing glimpses of blue sky and snow-covered peaks. "I think," I said slowly, "I stopped trying to be perfect and started trying to be useful." The Morrison Project had taught me to fear making the wrong decision so much that I'd stopped making decisions at all. But this morning, surrounded by people who actually wanted to solve a problem rather than assign blame for past failures, I'd remembered something important. Leadership isn't about having all the answers. It's about asking the right questions and creating space for good ideas to grow. We still had 2 days left, and Thompson would be evaluating everyone's performance throughout the retreat. But for the first time in months, I felt like I might actually have something valuable to contribute. The afternoon session was coming up, building trust in high-stress environments. After this morning, I was almost looking forward to it. The afternoon session took place outdoors, despite the morning's lingering clouds. Thompson had announced we'd be doing a ropes course exercise, team building through literal trust falls and collaborative problem-solving 30 feet off the ground. "I hate heights," Christina admitted as we strapped on safety harnesses. The course consisted of a series of platforms connected by cables, rope bridges, and obstacles that required multiple people working together to navigate successfully. "That makes 2 of us," I said, looking up at the suspended platforms swaying gently in the mountain breeze. But something about the morning's success had left me feeling more willing to push beyond my comfort zone. Our team had been reshuffled for the afternoon. This time I was paired with Rebecca, Logan, and 3 people from the Denver office: Patricia, Vincent, and Nina. The irony wasn't lost on me. I'd be literally trusting my safety to the person who'd called me a failure less than 24 hours ago. "All right, team," Patricia called out as we approached the first platform. She was a senior project manager with 20 years of experience and the kind of calm competence that made you want to follow her anywhere. "The goal is to get everyone from Platform 1 to Platform 7, but each obstacle requires different combinations of people to complete. The first challenge was a rope bridge that could only support 2 people at a time, but required a 3rd person on the starting platform to release a locking mechanism that would allow the bridge to extend fully. "I'll stay back and handle the release," I volunteered, studying the setup. "Rebecca, you and Logan are both lighter, you should cross first and then help the others from the other side." "Are you sure?" Rebecca asked, and there was something different in her voice. Not challenging exactly, but genuinely asking for my opinion. "Yeah. We'll need someone on each platform to coordinate the timing, and Patricia has the most experience reading these kinds of setups." What followed was the most effective teamwork I'd experienced in months. Instead of second-guessing every decision, I found myself trusting my instincts about timing, communication, and how to position people for success. When Vincent froze halfway across the bridge, paralyzed by the height, I talked him through breathing exercises while Logan created a distraction by telling ridiculous stories about his worst hiking mishaps. "You're good at this," Nina said as we moved to the second obstacle, a cargo net that required people to climb in a specific sequence, supporting each other's weight at crucial moments. "Thanks. I think I'd forgotten that for a while." The second platform presented a bigger challenge: a series of suspended logs that teams had to traverse while maintaining physical contact with each other. If anyone lost contact, everyone had to start over. "This is going to require trust," Patricia said, studying the course. And communication. If someone's struggling, we all need to know immediately. Rebecca was clearly nervous. Heights were obviously not her thing, and the logs swayed unpredictably with each step. Hey, I said, catching her attention. Remember the Henderson presentation last year? When the projector died right before you had to present to the board. She nodded, looking confused about why I was bringing up ancient history. You didn't panic. You adapted. You told the story without slides and made it more compelling than any PowerPoint could have been. This is just another kind of adaptation. Something shifted in her expression. You remember that? I remember a lot of things. Including the fact that you're one of the best people I've ever worked with when you're not worried about who's going to get blamed if something goes wrong. We started across the logs, maintaining a chain of contact, hands on shoulders, voices calling out warnings about loose bark or unexpected movement. Halfway across, Rebecca's foot slipped. I've got you, I said immediately, adjusting my grip to take more of her weight. Nina, can you shift left about 6 inches? Patricia, there's a solid grip point about 2 feet ahead of you. We moved like a single organism, compensating for each other's weaknesses, amplifying each other's strengths. When we reached the far platform, everyone was breathing hard but grinning. That was, Rebecca paused, looking back at the course we just completed. I couldn't have done that alone. None of us could have, Logan pointed out. That's kind of the point. The next 3 obstacles required increasingly complex coordination. One involved a zip line that could only be used if teams arranged themselves to create counterweight systems. Another required people to solve puzzles while supporting teammates who were navigating a rope maze. With each challenge, I found myself falling back into a leadership rhythm I'd thought I'd lost. Not the kind of leadership that demanded compliance, but the kind that helped people discover what they were capable of when they worked together. Jordan, Patricia said as we approached the final platform, you've been running point on most of these challenges. You feeling okay about taking lead on this last one? The final obstacle was a doozy, a series of platforms at different heights, connected by ropes and cables that teams had to rearrange while crossing. It required someone to coordinate movements while everyone else focused on their individual tasks. Actually, I said, looking around at the team, I think Rebecca should take lead on this one. Everyone turned to look at me, including Rebecca, who seemed genuinely surprised. She's been reading the team dynamics better than anyone, I continued. She noticed Vincent's breathing pattern before he had his panic moment on the bridge. She caught the loose cable on platform 4 before anyone put weight on it. And she's been keeping track of everyone's energy levels. Rebecca blinked. You think I should? I think you should trust yourself the way we've all learned to trust each other up here. What happened next was remarkable. Rebecca stepped into the coordination role with a confidence I hadn't seen from her in our entire working relationship. She positioned people based on their strengths, called out timing, and guided us through the most complex challenge of the course with the kind of clear, supportive leadership that made everyone want to do their best work. When we finally reached the ground, our team had completed the course faster than any other group, but more importantly, everyone felt like they'd contributed something essential. That was incredible, Nina said as we shed our harnesses. I mean, I've done team building exercises before, but that felt different. It felt real, Vincent added. Like we were actually solving problems instead of just going through motions. Thompson appeared as we were debriefing, clipboard in hand, watching our group with interest. How did it go up there? He asked. It went well, I said. Really well. But honestly, the success belonged to everyone. Rebecca's coordination in the final section was masterful. Logan kept morale up when things got challenging. Patricia's experience reading the equipment kept us safe. Thompson made notes, nodding slowly. And what did you learn about yourself, Jordan? I thought about it. I learned that leadership isn't about having all the answers or never making mistakes. It's about creating conditions where other people can do their best work, and being willing to step back when someone else is better positioned to lead. Interesting perspective, Thompson said. Rebecca, what's your take? Rebecca glanced at me, then back at Thompson. I learned that I've been focusing on the wrong things. I was so worried about working for someone who never failed that I forgot what it felt like to work with someone who helped me succeed. The words hung in the mountain air between us. Thompson made more notes and moved on to the next group, but Rebecca stayed behind as the others headed toward dinner. Jordan, she said quietly, about last night? You don't have to. Yes, I do. She took a breath. I was angry about Morrison, about being reassigned, about feeling like my career had stalled. But I took that out on you instead of looking at what was really happening. I waited, watching clouds drift across the peaks in the distance. You weren't failing as a leader, she continued. You were learning how to be a different kind of leader. And I was so busy comparing you to Kevin that I missed what you were actually good at. What's that? Making people feel capable. Making them want to try harder not because they're afraid of disappointing you, but because they believe you see something in them worth developing. We walked toward the lodge in comfortable silence, both of us processing what had shifted between us during 6 hours of literal and metaphorical high-wire acts. Tomorrow was the final day, ending with presentations to Thompson about what we'd learned and how we planned to apply it back at work. For the first time in months, I was looking forward to the chance to speak about leadership, about teamwork, about what happened when people stopped managing failure and started creating conditions for success. The retreat was almost over, but something told me the real work was just beginning. The final day dawned clear and bright, with the kind of crisp mountain air that makes everything feel possible. Through my hotel room window, I could see the peaks outlined sharply against a cloudless sky, and for the first time in months, the metaphor didn't feel overwhelming. Mountains weren't obstacles, they were destinations. Our final session was scheduled for 10 a.m. Individual presentations to CEO Thompson about our key takeaways and how we plan to implement what we'd learned back in our regular work environment. 15 minutes per person plus Q&A. The kind of high-stakes individual performance that would have terrified me 3 days ago. Now I found myself actually looking forward to it. I spent the morning reviewing my notes, but more importantly, thinking about what had really changed since Rebecca called me a failure in the lobby on Tuesday night. It wasn't that I'd suddenly developed new skills or knowledge. It was that I'd remembered who I was when I wasn't paralyzed by the fear of being wrong. Logan knocked on my door at 9:30. Ready for this? Yeah, I said and meant it. How are you feeling? Nervous but good nervous. Like I actually have something worth saying. He paused as we walked toward the elevators. Whatever happens today, I wanted to thank you. For what? For showing me what it looks like when someone admits they don't have all the answers but still takes responsibility for helping the team succeed. That's not something they teach you in business school. The conference room had been reconfigured for presentations, a small stage area with a projector, chairs arranged in a semicircle. Thompson sat in the center with a legal pad, flanked by 2 other executives I recognized but hadn't worked with directly. Rebecca was presenting when we arrived. I caught the tail end of her talk about leadership through trust building and creating psychological safety for innovation. She was confident, articulate, making direct eye contact with Thompson as she spoke. When she finished, the feedback was positive. Thompson seemed genuinely impressed with her insights about team dynamics. Kevin went next, delivering a polished presentation about strategic decision-making under pressure. It was the kind of presentation Kevin excelled at: data-driven, professionally formatted, hitting all the expected corporate leadership talking points. Solid, competent, exactly what you'd expect from a regional director. Then it was my turn. I walked to the front of the room carrying only a single index card with 3 bullet points. No PowerPoint, no elaborate visual aids. Just me and the things I'd learned about leadership when I stopped being afraid of admitting I had things to learn. 3 days ago, I began, my assistant told me I was a failure as a leader. She wasn't entirely wrong. Thompson raised an eyebrow. A few people shifted in their seats. This wasn't the kind of opening most people chose for career-defining presentations. The Morrison Project was a disaster, and it was a disaster because I was so afraid of making the wrong decision that I stopped making decisions at all. I was so focused on avoiding failure that I forgot how to create success. I could see Rebecca in my peripheral vision, sitting up straighter. But over the past 3 days, working with different teams on different challenges, I've learned something important about the difference between management and leadership. Management is about controlling outcomes. Leadership is about creating conditions where good outcomes become possible. I walked over to the flip chart and drew 2 circles. In the first circle, the leader is responsible for having all the answers, making all the decisions and preventing all mistakes. In that model, the leader is the bottleneck. Everything flows through them, and if they hesitate or doubt themselves, everything stops. I drew a second circle with lines radiating outward. In the second circle, the leader is responsible for helping other people discover their own capabilities, for creating trust so people feel safe to take risks, and for coordinating efforts so individual strengths combine into collective success. I turned back to Thompson. The Morrison Project failed because I was trying to be the first kind of leader with a team that needed the second kind. I was so worried about being blamed for mistakes that I created an environment where nobody felt safe to suggest solutions. And what would you do differently now? Thompson asked. I'd start by admitting that I don't have all the answers, but I'm committed to helping the team find them. I'd create regular opportunities for people to take ownership of different aspects of the project. And I'd measure success not just by outcomes, but by whether people felt more capable and confident after working with me than they did before. Thompson made notes, nodding slowly. Can you give me a specific example? I thought about the Cascade outdoor gear exercise, about the ropes course, about watching Rebecca step into leadership when I created space for it. Yesterday, during the problem-solving exercise, our team developed what I think was the strongest solution to the Cascade challenge. But the breakthrough didn't come from me having a brilliant idea. It came from me asking questions that helped other people share their insights, and then creating a framework where those insights could build on each other. I glanced at Rebecca, who was watching intently. My former assistant, made a crucial connection about authentic marketing that I never would have thought of. But she only shared it because the team environment made it safe for her to build on someone else's idea instead of competing for individual recognition. And how do you plan to apply this back at work? Thompson asked. I'd like to request a chance to work on client recovery specifically, reaching out to clients we've lost due to communication or coordination issues. Not to blame anyone for past problems, but to demonstrate that we've learned how to work differently. How to be honest about our limitations while showcasing our collective strengths. Thompson set down his pen and looked at me directly. Jordan, I have to say, this is not the presentation I was expecting from you. My heart stopped for a moment. 3 days ago, based on the Morrison situation and feedback from your team, I was prepared to recommend that you transition into a more specialized, individual contributor role. Good analytical skills, but perhaps not leadership material. The room was completely quiet. I could hear my own heartbeat. But what I've observed over the past 3 days from multiple colleagues, in multiple situations, suggests that my initial assessment was incomplete. Thompson stood up, walking over to the flip chart where my 2 circles were still drawn. Rebecca, could you join us up here for a moment? Rebecca looked surprised but walked to the front of the room. Rebecca, you worked closely with Jordan for several months, then transitioned to working with Kevin. Based on your experience this week, what's your assessment of Jordan's leadership capabilities? Rebecca looked at me, then at Thompson, then back at me. I think, she said carefully, that I confused confidence with competence. Kevin makes decisions quickly and rarely second-guesses himself. That felt like strong leadership when I was frustrated with Jordan's more collaborative approach. She paused, gathering her thoughts. But this week, I realized that Jordan's hesitation on Morrison wasn't indecision, it was him trying to find solutions that would work for everyone instead of just pushing through his first idea. And when he created space for other people to contribute, the results were better than anything any of us could have accomplished individually. Thompson nodded slowly. Kevin, what's your perspective? Kevin looked uncomfortable being put on the spot, but to his credit, he answered honestly. Jordan's approach is different from mine. I tend to move fast and adjust course if needed. Jordan moves more carefully, but when he does move, he brings people with him. Both approaches have value, depending on the situation. Thompson turned back to me. Jordan, I'm going to make you an offer. We're opening a new West Coast office focused on client relationship recovery and retention. It's exactly the kind of work you described, taking clients who've had negative experiences and rebuilding those relationships through better communication and collaboration. I stared at him, not quite processing what I was hearing. The position is Director of Client Relations, reporting directly to me. Your first assignment would be to personally lead the effort to win back Morrison, along with 3 other accounts we've lost in the past year. You'd have a team of 4, including the authority to request specific people you want to work with. The room erupted in surprised murmurs. Director level. Reporting to the CEO. A chance to prove that failure could be transformed into opportunity. Rebecca, Thompson continued, if you're interested, Jordan will need an experienced operations manager for his team. Someone who understands both the analytical side and the relationship side of client work. Rebecca's eyes widened. You're offering me a chance to work with Jordan again? I'm offering you a chance to work with the leader Jordan has shown he can be, if you think that's something you'd be interested in. She looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Then she smiled, the first genuine smile I'd seen from her since before the Morrison project imploded. Yes, she said. I'd like that very much. As the presentations concluded and people began filing out for lunch, Logan approached me with a huge grin. So, he said, from failure to director in 3 days. That might be some kind of record. I laughed, still processing everything that had just happened. Logan, you interested in moving to the West Coast? I'm going to need good people, and I know someone who's excellent at asking the right questions. Are you serious? Dead serious. I learned this week that the best leaders surround themselves with people who make them better. You make me better. As we walked out into the bright Colorado morning, Rebecca fell into step beside us. So, she said, ready to call Morrison and ask for another chance? I thought about it, about walking into a room with a client who'd fired us, about admitting we'd failed them, about asking them to trust us to do better. 3 days ago the prospect would have terrified me. Now it sounded like exactly the kind of challenge I was ready for. Yeah, I said, looking out at the mountains one last time before we headed back to real life. I think I am. The retreat was over, but the real work, the work of turning failure into wisdom, mistakes into opportunities, and individual talent into collective success was just beginning. And for the first time in months, I couldn't wait to get started.